What if parts of human history didn't disappear naturally, but were quietly forgotten? Across old photographs, ancient writings, and overlooked accounts, strange details keep appearing. Figures standing far taller than those around them. Structures built on a scale that doesn't quite match modern humans. Stories that feel too consistent to simply ignore. Official history tells us that humans have always been roughly the same size we are today. That explanation is simple, and it feels comfortable. But the historical record isn't as clean as it appears. We're not here to prove anything. We're here to ask why certain ideas continue to surface even after they're dismissed. Some of the earliest records left by ancient civilizations describe unusually tall people. Not monsters, not gods, but humans. These figures are described as builders, warriors, and rulers. They lived among ordinary people and were often remembered as those who came before. What's strange is how often these accounts appear in cultures separated by oceans and centuries. Long before global communication existed, similar descriptions were being recorded in different parts of the world. Historians usually interpret these stories as myths or symbols, and perhaps they are, but symbolism usually changes from culture to culture. These descriptions don't change very much. That raises a quiet question. Were these stories exaggerated over time, or were they describing something that once seemed ordinary? When photography became widespread in the 1800s, history gained a new kind of record. For the first time, everyday life could be preserved in detail. Families posed together. Workers stood beside their tools. Communities gathered for simple portraits. And among these photographs are images that feel out of place. Men and women standing far taller than those beside them. Proportions that don't align with known medical conditions. Faces calm and expressions neutral, as if nothing about their size was unusual. Most of these images are damaged by time. Grainy, blurred, faded. That makes them easy to dismiss, but it also makes them unsettling. If they were meant to deceive, why do they look so ordinary? Why do they resemble family photos instead of spectacles? Across the world, there are structures that seem designed for a different scale. Doorways that tower above modern visitors. Steps that feel too large for comfortable walking. Stone blocks weighing tens of tons, placed with precision that still challenges modern engineering. The standard explanation is lost techniques or advanced engineering methods. And that may be true, but architecture reflects the people who use it. If a civilization included individuals far taller than us, the scale of these structures would suddenly feel practical, not mysterious. Sometimes the question isn't how something was built, but who it was built for. If unusually tall humans once existed, what happened to them? Some theories suggest environmental changes or disease. Others suggest gradual disappearance through interbreeding with smaller populations. There are also claims that certain discoveries were removed, mislabeled, or quietly reclassified. Exhibits change, collections disappear, records are updated. History is not just discovered, it's curated. That doesn't automatically mean deception, but it does mean decisions are made about what remains visible and what fades into the background. Despite skepticism, the idea of giants never fully disappears. It survives in old stories passed down quietly, in rural legends, in forgotten photographs, in buildings that don't quite fit us. Each example on its own can be explained away. Together, they form a pattern that keeps returning, not because it's proven, but because it's unresolved. Human curiosity lives in unanswered questions. Maybe giants never existed. Maybe every story, image, and structure has an explanation that fits comfortably within what we already know. But history has gaps, and those gaps invite questions. The real mystery may not be whether giants once walked the earth, but why the idea continues to make people uncomfortable, and why, no matter how often it's dismissed, it never truly goes away. There is also the matter of how history is preserved in the first place. Most people imagine history as a fixed record, a collection of facts, dates, and discoveries that remain unchanged. In reality, history is shaped by what survives, what is recorded, and what is considered important enough to keep. Many records from the past were lost to fires, wars, floods, and time. Others were written by a small number of people, often long after the events they described. This means the historical record is not a complete picture, but a fragmentary one. When something doesn't fit neatly into existing explanations, it's often set aside rather than explored. In the late 19th and early 20th centuries, archaeology was still developing as a discipline. Standards were inconsistent. Discoveries were sometimes handled privately, catalogued poorly, or not preserved at all. What didn't align with expectations could be ignored, misidentified, or quietly removed from public view. This doesn't require a coordinated effort or a hidden agenda. It only requires human bias, the tendency to favor explanations that feel familiar and safe. Unusual findings challenge established timelines. They raise questions that don't have easy answers, and questions without answers tend to make people uncomfortable. The idea of giants does exactly that. It challenges assumptions about human development, biology, and civilization. It suggests that the past may have been more complex and less settled than we like to believe. That alone is enough to make the topic controversial. There are also cultural reasons the idea persists. Stories of giants often appear during times of transition, when societies are trying to explain ruins, tools, or landscapes left behind by people they no longer understand. When knowledge is lost, imagination fills the gap. A massive stone structure becomes the work of giants. Oversized tools become relics of larger hands. Stories grow, shift, and solidify over generations. Over time, myth and memory blend together. But not all myths emerge from nothing. Sometimes they form around real observations, exaggerated through retelling. Sometimes they preserve fragments of truth in symbolic form, and sometimes they exist simply because something was never fully explained. What makes the idea of giants so persistent is that it sits at the edge of certainty. There is just enough ambiguity to keep it alive, just enough strange detail to resist complete dismissal, and just enough absence of evidence to prevent clear confirmation. This is the uncomfortable space where unanswered questions live. Modern science relies on repeatable evidence and clear documentation. Without bones, DNA, or verified remains, claims of giants remain speculative, and speculation has no place in formal historical conclusions. But curiosity doesn't follow the same rules. Curiosity asks, what if? It asks whether something might have existed briefly, locally, or under conditions we no longer understand. It asks whether the past could contain anomalies that didn't survive long enough to leave a clear trace. Not everything that existed left evidence behind. Entire species have vanished with barely a trace. Cultures have disappeared, leaving only fragments of language or stone. Knowledge has been lost and rediscovered more than once throughout human history. Against that backdrop, the idea that something unusual could have existed and then faded away no longer seems impossible. It simply remains unproven, and that distinction matters. The question of giants is less about belief and more about uncertainty. It highlights how much of our understanding of the past depends on incomplete information. It reveals how easily narratives become fixed, even when evidence is limited. In that sense, giants function as a mirror. They reflect our discomfort with ambiguity, our desire for clean explanations, our tendency to close the door on ideas that complicate the story we've agreed upon. Whether giants were ever real may not be the most important part of the discussion. What matters is why the question itself continues to surface, why people keep searching through old photographs, re-examining ancient texts and standing beneath towering ruins, wondering if something has been overlooked. Perhaps the past is not a straight line, but a landscape filled with missing pieces. And perhaps some of those pieces don't fit the shape we expect. History is not only what we know, it is also what we no longer remember. And sometimes, the most enduring mysteries are not hidden by secrets, but by silence.